Okay, so
yeah,
this is our Let's Talk About Neurodiversity. My name is Neil Hogg. I am one of the district lead volunteers in Pentland, as well as being part of the regional programme team, also part of the inclusion team of the region as well. And in my day job outside scouting, I work in a primary school. I have done for the past 19 years, currently working as a pupil support officer. And part of my role is to help support children in the school with additional needs. And we also have Louise on. I'll hand over to Louise to let her introduce herself.
I'm Louise. I am a beaver leader at the 14th Edinburgh North East Group. I also help with other bits, inclusion team, young leaders. Wherever somebody's needing help, I usually pop up, so you'll maybe see me around. But I am a mum to 2 boys, one of which has a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And when we were going through the process of wait lists and appointments and assessments through CAMHS, I wanted to be as informed as I could. So I've did loads of research, read books, spoke with people with experience in neurodiversity, joined some one-day courses, did webinars so that I could better understand how my boy was seeing the world and give him the support that he needed. I'm not an expert by any means, but so I might use some terminology or examples that might not be fully accurate if there's anybody here with neurodiversity conditions, but it's what I've come to understand about my boy's conditions and from other young people that I've worked with through scouting.
Perfect. If we move on to the next slide, Alison, and on to the next one actually, because we've done our introductions. So this session will hopefully give you a better understanding of what neurodiversity is and how better to support neurodivergent young people in your sections, as well as any adults you volunteer with or parents you may have any interactions with. As Louise says, both of us are, neither of us are experts in this field, but both have experience of supporting neurodivergent young people. And we recognise the importance of raising awareness as well as offering support and help to fellow volunteers who may have less experience in this area of inclusion. So first off, I suppose we better think about what is neurodiversity. And I thought instead of me trying to explain it, I would try and find a video that would explain it better. So if we go on to the next slide. We should have a video. Or not. No, there we go. Hopefully you can all hear that. No? Oh, okay. Hopefully have it ready to go in the background somewhere.
Video, or
no?
No, you couldn't hear it. Right, hold on. I need to work out how to do this. 2 ticks. I need to be able to share sound.
Will it play through the YouTube video link? No.
Yeah. So I sent the YouTube video link as well. So if you're able to open that.
Should be just when you press the share button, there's a bit at the top that says include sound.
Right. I'm not muted, so I will keep my mouth shut, but shout at me if this doesn't work, okay?
Just like our fingerprints, all our brains are unique. But for the majority of people, their brains are similar enough that there are largely no obvious differences in how they function. They have differences in things like skills, preferences, and styles. But mostly, their brains mean they perceive the world in the same way. But for others, their brains are more fundamentally different. They have differences in things like social understanding, sensory processing, communication, and information processing. These differences are a result of neurological differences, such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and more. This natural variation in our brains is called neurodiversity. Those of us with no neurological conditions are neurotypical, and those of us with neurological conditions are neurodivergent. Neurodivergent people think differently. Their unique perspectives and experiences mean they can often excel at creativity and innovation, have highly specialised skill sets, and an ability to hyperfocus. If embraced, this can be a huge advantage to organisations and society. However, the differences neurodivergent people experience can make life challenging. In order to thrive at work, they often need some simple accommodations. For example, a sensory calm environment to recharge in, or a routine with the same start and end times. Approximately 1 in 7 people are neurodivergent. So not only is embracing neurodiversity critical for a truly inclusive organisation, but it also presents organisations with a huge opportunity.
Okay, so hopefully that video gave you a good understanding of what neurodiversity is and the main differences between a neurodiverse and neurotypical brain. I think one of the things mentioned in the video that really stands out for me is when it talked about the kind of numbers. 1 in 7 young people, or 1 in 7 people are neurodivergent, which would say in a section of say 24 young people that would equate to 3 being neurodivergent. Neurodiversity covers a lot of areas and has different recognised conditions, as mentioned in the video, such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and Tourette's. We could spend hours and hours going over all the different conditions that it covers. However, we've decided to kind of narrow it down to focus on 2 that we feel are the most challenging in the aspects of inclusion for Scouting, which are autism and ADHD. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, thank you. So first of all, what I'll do is I'm going to give you a kind of brief overview of kind of autism and ADHD. And then after that, Louise will kind of discuss a bit about the characteristics of both of them. So autism or ASD is a neurological or developmental condition that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. Symptoms generally appear within the first 2 years of life, and it's estimated that there are around 700,000 autistic children and adults in the UK. When we think of autism, we think of it as a spectrum, hence the name autistic spectrum disorder. The spectrum in the name reflects the wide range of ways that autism manifests in individuals, with each person experiencing unique strengths and challenges. In the past, people thought the spectrum was a straight line between kind of more autistic and less autistic. This isn't right, as it is far, far more complicated than that. When we come to think of it now, we like to think of it as a kind of wheel. And if you go on to the next slide, Alison. So it's better to think of it as a wheel, where each autistic person has a unique combination of characteristics. People with ADHD are all different to each other with different sets of strengths and challenges. I would say this is not a kind of official wheel. This is just an example of some of the characteristics that autistic people can have strengths with or challenges with. And it shows that they can have challenges in certain areas, such as social skills or anxiety, but can have strengths in things like routines and sensory sensitivities. You may have also heard the term Asperger's syndrome used to describe high-functioning autism. However, this is no longer used as a separate term for when people are being diagnosed with autism. So that just kind of gives you a brief overview of it. And I say Louise will give you some kind of characteristics, and then we're going to talk a bit about some tips towards the end. Next one, if we go to the next slide. The other one we're going to talk a bit about is ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactive disorder. This is a condition where people show persistent patterns of inattention and or hyperactivity that interferes with their day-to-day functioning and or development. I think the key word there is persistent pattern. We've all seen children who are hyperactive for a certain period of time, especially after they've had a whole bag of sweets themselves. And we've definitely seen children who are inattentive if they've been up all night playing video games. But children with ADHD, it's a persistent pattern, meaning over and over again, and they're displaying these patterns. It's characterized by 3 different subtypes, which is the hyperactive / impulsive type. There's the inattentive type, and there's a combination type of both the types together. And it's estimated that 3 to 4% of the UK population has ADHD, and it affects males more, with a ratio of 3 to 1 over females. So that was a kind of whistle-stop tour of the 2 of them. I'm going to hand over now to Louise, who's going to talk a bit about some of the characteristics of both of them.
Thank you. Next slide, Alison. Thank you. Yeah, so I made a list of some characteristics of autism and ADHD. Some characteristics are shared and some of them will conflict with each other. It's not an exhaustive list. Not every person with autism or ADHD will show every one of these symptoms. And the thing that's most important to note is that even neurotypical people will show some of these characteristics. But for neurodivergent people, it can be really something that they struggle with or they can't control. So my son can struggle with social interactions quite a bit. He'll misunderstand social cues and find it really difficult to join in with group activities. This is the autism side of things. It can be really hard for him even to hold conversations sometimes. You'll find that some autistic people can really struggle with communication, and they might use things like picture cards at schools and things to help them verbalise what it is that they need or want, because putting it into words can be really difficult for them. Autistic people sometimes will be very black and white thinkers. So an example of this is if you say to somebody who's neurodiverse or that you will do something in a minute, they will count to 60 seconds in their head and then expect you to do it because it's what you've said, so they don't think you would mean anything else but that. It's not them being rude, it's not them being impatient, it's just that that's how they've understood what you've said. A person with autism might prefer to become in a certain routine or a ritual, and if that gets disrupted, it can be quite upsetting for them. Again, they might want to be in a smaller group or on their own, but they do still like to have that interaction. So my son really has benefited from being at Scouts because he has the flexibility in his group to be able to join in when he wants to, join in a group or do the activity himself at the side, and that's really helped his kind of social interactions. A person with ADHD on the other side of the table, as the name suggests, be extremely energetic, have a lot of energy, can be quite easily distracted. If you've planned an activity where a young person with ADHD has to sit quietly for a long period of time, it can make them quite restless. My son, for example, will start a task and then move on to the next one without finishing because his brain's working mile a minute. He just needs to go on to the next thing and something will pop in his head and he wants to move on. He'll get an idea in his head and think of nothing else but that, such as setting up soft archery in the living room at 8:30 at night, right next to the TV, without any thought that actually it's bedtime and that it's really close to TV, it could break it. It's that impulsiveness, that risk taking. He didn't do this to be disruptive or defiant or anything like that. It just, that idea popped in his head and he thought nothing of it, I'm going to set it up. And it wasn't until you explain it that actually that might not be the best idea for this reason. And he goes, okay, yeah. So with ADHD, sometimes they'll struggle with sleep as well, sleep patterns. So on camp, if you've got somebody who has ADHD, they could be the last person to go to sleep at 3 AM, the one that the leaders need to keep telling to be quiet, and then they're back up at 6 AM full of beans. And it could be due to that lack of melatonin, which is a sleep hormone, controls the wake sleep cycle. Again, it's not something that they're always necessarily in control of. It's just the way it can be sometimes for some people. It's common for neurodivergent people to have simultaneous conditions as well. So in my boy's case, it's autism and ADHD, and we're starting to suspect that there's a bit of dyslexia there as well. So the most common trait for neurodivergent people, autism and ADHD, is masking. So when they're getting through the day, they're trying really hard not to let all these other characteristics affect their actions and thoughts and what they're doing throughout the day, acting like everybody else around them to make it through their work or their school day without any issues. And then when they get home and they're in a safe space or with safe people, the mask drops and it can be like a huge come down or emotional dysregulation. Some examples I'll use is the Coke bottle. So throughout the day as they're masking, these things are annoying them or affecting them, and it's like shaking the can of Coke, and then when they get home it's explode, can lead to a meltdown. We've had quite a few after school because he didn't know how to express himself at school. He was masking. Teachers didn't think there was anything wrong because he was acting the way all the other kids were, but actually the school day was a huge struggle for him because he was having to interact with friends at playtime. The lunch hall had been noisy. He was being made to sit and do schoolwork quietly, and the ADHD side, that was a lot for him. So that really opened my eyes that a day for a neurodivergent person can be difficult, that people don't necessarily see. Some shared traits, again, is a sensory sensitivity or insensitivity. So the insensitivity being that they genuinely don't feel cold, so they'll go out in the winter without a jacket. It's not that they just didn't want to wear one because it messes with their outfit. They just didn't feel it and didn't think that they needed the jacket. Thinking about sensory sensitivity, if you're in a loud scout hall, your shoes have got wet on a hike, there's a strong smell in the dorms, unfamiliar foods on the menu, a stiff collar in the scout shirt, that can be annoying for anybody, but to somebody with sensory issues it can be really unbearable and cause them to be quite upset. The executive functioning as well is something that neurodivergent people can struggle with. So that is things like your organisation, prioritising, decision making, that can be really tricky. So things like think of the tent that's got their belongings everywhere and they need to pack up. It can get really overwhelming because it's having to organise things. A scout leader having to try and plan a programme without support of a team or other kind of volunteers could be really difficult for them to plan and run an activity or a programme night. Think about a parent who trying to understand all the information that's in the email, answer the email and ask the questions 10, 20 times to understand it all. Taking that time out to help them understand it, speaking to them on a one-on-one basis could be really beneficial to them. Another common trait for neurodiverse people is stimming. So this will be when you maybe see them tapping, flapping their hands, jumping from foot to foot, like doing things with their fingers. Can present in a lot of different ways, but it's like a repetitive motion, and that can be from the autistic side of things, could be them trying to regulate or be a habit, or for ADHD it could be them trying to get the excess energy out. Either condition, they'll be seeking dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone, which is something that they can get from something that gives them satisfaction or a release, such as their favourite object, food, activity, TV show, and that's what they will want to do again and again. And if a neurodivergent person has a lack of dopamine, it's overstimulated by sensory experiences and all these other things go on throughout the day, it can really affect their mental health and cause anxieties. Can you move on to the next one, Alison, please? So there is a lot of traits there that can make a day difficult for a neurodivergent person, but it's also can be a really good thing for people. It can have a lot of good benefits as well. One being attention to detail. They can be very thorough. If a job's going to get done to a high level, if you ask a young person who's neurodivergent, go build a den, it'll have 2 floors, a moat and a ring doorbell, because they will be so into it and they will get it done to the highest specification. It can be very accurate and analytical, spot trends and patterns very quickly. It just comes to them. They can just see it quicker maybe. Expertise. So if one trait we mentioned earlier was a hyper focus, so they will spend time learning everything there is to know about a topic. Could be a football team, space, the history about knot tying and their uses, and they will focus on this information, be so almost obsessive in a way, but they will go over and over all that information or practice a skill over and over, and they will become very knowledgeable or very highly skilled. That deep focus again, so when they are in the zone and they've got a genuine interest in something and they're motivated, they can be very task orientated and they will focus and get it done. That's true of ADHD and autism. So as much as ADHD can struggle with their attention, if they are motivated at something they're interested in, they could sit and enjoy a task or do something for as long as they needed to. Novel approaches. So I mentioned earlier about black and white thinking, but that's just because that's how they have understood it. A neurodivergent person can have a thought process that's very unique, outside the box thinking that's different to a neurotypical person's way of thinking. They will find the smartest way of doing something. Work harder, not hard, work smarter, not harder. That's my son. He will find the quickest way to get his homework done because he just wants to get through it. Can be very innovative. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in science and technology came from neurodiverse people. Things like Einstein, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, all neurodivergent. Can be very creative people as well. So neurodivergent people can be very visual thinkers, visual expressiveness. So their ideas, they like to get them out. Could be very good artistically, could be entertaining, thinking of like Tim Burton movies, he's neurodivergent. Things like acting, very entertaining, Robin Williams, Idris Elba. Singing and songwriting, Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters. Gymnastics, Simone Biles. So all these traits they've practiced over and over, they've got good at something, they're very creative. Some of the most successful people in the world. And neurodivergent people as well tend to be very accepting because they're very accepting and inclusive because they don't see why it should be any other way. So when my son was taught about things like racism, sexism at school, he genuinely was confused because he was like, but why wouldn't it be fair? Why wouldn't it be equal? Because that's just how his brain was wired. He just thought that is just the way it should be, and it's probably one of the best ways to live. So yeah, there is challenges, but it's also can have its positives. Back to you, Neil, for some myth busting.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. I think that's really important to kind of cover the kind of positive sides of neurodiversity and shows what it can actually bring to scouting as well, whether it be through young people or adults as well. Yeah, I kind of thought it'd be good to kind of go through some of the myths that are sometimes associated with autism and ADHD. A lot of these I've come across in my time, whether it's professionally at work or through scouting. The first one I've heard is only children are autistic, which is absolutely nonsense. Autism is a lifelong condition that doesn't just go away when you reach adulthood. In fact, studies have shown that there are more adults in the UK with autism than children. And that's really important, as there may be adults in scouting who you volunteer with, who are autistic, who may need additional support or adjustments to be included as part of a team. And it's also important when it comes to parents and carers that you come in contact with who may be autistic. It's important to bear that in mind in kind of communications that you have and ways you interact with them. The next myth that I have heard. So ADHD isn't a serious disorder that can really damage your life. Again, absolute nonsense. Inadequately treated ADHD can severely affect learning, relationships, domestic and social life. Many people with ADHD can function extremely well, but there are others who struggle to cope with life. ADHD is associated with lower levels of educational achievement, and young people in your section may be struggling at school, scouting being the only thing that they're doing well at or enjoying. So making sure that they are supported and encouraged when they're scouting is key. Next myth, only boys have autism or ADHD. People of all genders can have autism or ADHD. However, it does affect males more, with a ratio of around 4 to 1 in autism, and 3-to-1 in ADHD. The presentation can be different between males and females, with females more likely to mask their autistic traits and be better at learning skills to interact with other people better than males can. Similarly, at ADHD, the presentation can be different, with girls less likely to be hyperactive and impulsive and more inattentive and likely to be more daydreamy than boys. Next one. Young people with ADHD can't focus on anything for a long time. I've often heard people say that, oh well, that child can focus absolutely on some things, so therefore they can't have ADHD. But as Louise kind of alluded to earlier, if they've got a certain interest or it's something that's interesting to them, they can certainly sit for long periods of time and be hyper focused on it. It only comes up when it's something they're asked to do that is not particularly rewarding to them, or they don't think they're going to enjoy. That's when they can lose focus really quickly. And it may seem that young people in sections can't sit and do an activity for very long, or they just won't do it at all. But we talked about they can do it if it's something that's interesting for them. So that's why it's really important to get to know the young people in your section who are neurodivergent, get to know their interests, and try and encourage that so that they can have something to focus on. Next one. All autistic people are unsociable and like to be on their own. I think we've seen that one quite a few times in kind of film and TV. And this may be true for some autistic people, but it's not true of all. Just like neurotypical people enjoy socializing, and some also prefer to be on their own. Autistic people may find it challenging to be in social situations due to lacking certain communication skills, such as being able to understand body language, tone of voice, and different ways of communicating, such as using sarcasm. That can be a very black and white way of thinking. And this may cause them sometimes to avoid socializing with other people. However, that doesn't mean they don't want to be sociable and make friends. It just means that they find it more difficult. And sometimes when we find something difficult to do, we tend to avoid it. There's a really useful resource out there, Milestone Autism resource, which has a very useful web page that offers support and advice about communicating with people with autism. So I would recommend looking that one up. Next one we have. This is one that even in schools, working away with people who are meant to be professionals, still get. And I hope that you sat through and listened to all this stuff so far, that you know that it's absolutely nothing to do with bad parenting. It's all about what's going on in the brain. But sometimes you still hear that people saying, "Oh well, their parents aren't doing the right thing." That I could do a better job of the game to me. I could cure them. I could make them better. And I think that it's just absolute nonsense. Majority of parents and carers are trying to do the best as they can in extremely difficult circumstances. And what may be perceived as bad parenting is actually maybe what works best for them, or what they've been advised by a health professional. Therefore, it's really important to be understanding when you're speaking to parents and carers about challenges, and kind of avoiding making any judgments about the situation at home or their parenting styles. And the next one, all autistic people are the same. One of my favorite sayings: once you've met one scout with autism, you've met one scout with autism. There's no kind of it's not the case that they're all the same. I know I've met people who have said, right, well, we've got a new child coming in who's autistic, and we'll just do exactly the same as we did with the previous child we had who's autistic. They are all different, just like neurotypical people. They don't share all the same characteristics, and have their own set of challenges and strengths, just like everyone else. So an autistic child comes in, then they will be very different to any other autistic child they've had before. There may be similar characteristics, but they're definitely not the same. And so it's really important to get to know any autistic person in your section, just in the way you would with any neurotypical young person, so you can offer the best support for them to thrive in scouting. I am going to hand back over to Louise.
Yep, so going over that, there's a lot of benefits in scouting for people for neurodiversity. So one being the social interaction, like we were saying. It's a safe and supportive space for people to interact with peers. They build their social skills, such as listening to other young people and leaders, communication, social cues. Really has helped my son massively. And any other young person or leader or parent would probably benefit from coming along to camps, meetings, and just being included. Structured activities, because our badge work criteria can be quite laid out quite nicely, that they need to do this, then this. Even running an activity or a meeting, if it's set up to the point where you've said, right, okay, everyone, this is what we're doing today, it helps somebody with ADHD manage the expectations and gives them focus and gives comfort to autistic people who crave routine. So if your meeting structure, for instance, I'll run my meetings, we all sit down, we say hello, I tell them what we're going to do. Our first half of the meeting's a bit more active and they've got the opportunity to go at the quiet corner if they want. We all sit down for juice break. The second half of the meeting's a bit more calmed down. We'll sit and we'll do maybe a creative activity or a bit of badge work, and then at the end we all come together, we kind of give a debrief and then we go. So that's the same structure I use for my meetings. And I have got a couple of kids in our section who quite like, because they know what's the runabout games we're doing today, what's the structured activity we're doing, or the sit down activity we're doing. And I think, yeah, they quite like to know what to expect. The skills development, so scouting offers a lot of progression through being a six or a lodge leader or patrol leader, gives them that leadership that they might not have gotten the opportunity to do elsewhere. Working in a team, doing problem solving, and leaders are there to give direction and support, and so are there other young people or peers. Other leaders can support leaders, young people can support young people, and there's loads of resources there as well for helping. Sense of achievement, so like Neil was saying, some children, not all, but some children at school might struggle to sit and listen through a lesson. It can be to the point they've maybe not done as well academically, or maybe even in work they might struggle. Through scouting, you can get a real sense of achievement by completing badges, getting your top awards. Even as a leader, how proud I feel when a meeting has come together and you've run that activity and it's went out a really good night. You feel so chuffed with yourself. It's a sense of achievement that really can be hard to find elsewhere sometimes. Confidence, so yep, getting those top awards, being able to have gone to a meeting, played games, made some friends, builds that confidence and self-esteem. And outdoor activities, so benefits of physical activity, outdoor activities. It can be a calmer environment outdoors. You go camping, it's nice, it's peaceful. Can improve your mental health, which is beneficial in keeping certain emotions regulated and managing sort of the symptoms of the conditions. Next slide, Alison, please. So yeah, how can we support? So communicating clearly. So I'd said earlier, some people really struggle with their communication, so they might need these little kind of picture cards. Giving clear instructions, don't just bombard them like, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Give them one at a time. Avoid or understand that sarcasm and colloquialisms might not be received well. Repeat if needed. Speak directly to them again. So if you've given the whole group instructions, if you need to speak to them, like, so you understand what you're doing, yeah. Like if you need help or you need me to remind you, come up and ask. Using visual aids or notes if needed. Break down tasks. So smaller manageable tasks, like say, don't give them loads of instructions in one go. Don't give a general instruction, because if you said, go and put that tent up, they could be panic stricken. You'll get, right, so what you need to do is you'll make sure you've got all your parts. set it out like this, make sure, give them a step by step if needed. If you expect them just to go and do something and it's quite a big task, it can be really overwhelming. And like I said, they might not ask for help, they could just sit there and feel like they can't do it, and it can be quite demotivating and upsetting. Offer breaks or a space to regulate. So if the hall has been noisy, if interacting's been a bit much, if it's a camp, it can be quite a long time to be away for a weekend. Let them have some downtime. Scout zone, you want to go up to the dorm for 20 minutes and read your book, that's fine. If we've got in our scout meeting hall, we've got a quiet corner. It's not always quiet, it's a room full of beers, but it's the quiet corner where if they don't want to do the activity, they can colour in. There's a box of fidgets. There's ear defenders. Offer positive reinforcement. So yeah, just that encouragement that they're doing well, that if they are maybe being a bit disruptive because you're expecting them to sit quiet for a quiet activity, speak to them quietly, like, you did really well, you've done good so far, let's move on to the next bit now, giving them support rather than drawing on the negatives. Be patient and understanding, because like we were saying before, it's not always in their control how they're acting. It might seem that they've been really loud when you needed it to be quiet, that they've not done anything that you've asked them to be doing, but it's because they've maybe not understood the task or been unable to ask them why they've struggled, help them if they need help. Collaborate with the person or with their families and carers, because like we said, you don't know autism because you've met one person with autism. Each person's is different and different things will work for each person. Adapt activities if suitable. Like we're saying, if you ask them to come and sit down and do knot tying, it might not be the most thrilling thing for them, but if you go, oh, we're tying knots because we need to build a den because they're really into survival skills, draw on what they're interested in. If you need it to be a quieter activity or not as big a group, maybe split them into smaller groups, do what you can to make it suitable for them. And if you can, include awareness activities and programs. So we've run nights where it's everybody's brains are different. You know, the old picture where it was a dress, was it white and gold or was it blue and black? Just to kind of show that everybody's brains are processing this differently and there's not a right or wrong answer. If you're showing people this through awareness in the activity and the programming, it doesn't need to be you're drawing attention to situations as they rise. They're made aware of it. Next slide, Alison. And then the last little bit that I had was some resources that I've used. So I was saying before, I had done some research when I found out that my son potentially might have been neurodivergent. It turns out, yes, he is. So during that, it's quite a long process. It's actually 3 years it took for us to go through the process of CAMHS to get an official diagnosis. And in that time, there's a lot of questioning and assessments. So for us as leaders, if you're supporting a young person with neurodivergence, you could be on the Scout website. There's loads of information on there, and there's some webinars coming up throughout May for neurodiversity and SEN, which is special educational needs. There's the South East Scotland Inclusion and Diversity page, which the website's there. There's the Scout Learning modules, the Scouting for All module. Place to Be is a really good charity. They do a lot of work with kids with their mental health, neurodivergence, all kinds of stuff. Really good resources on there. There's printouts, there's games, loads of stuff. Bernardo's run some half-day in-person courses, which was actually run by a neurodivergent person, so she was really open and honest, and there was no, oh, we don't know if we're allowed to ask that question, and what do you think this means? She was so, it was probably the best person to learn from, because she was good about talking about her experiences and very knowledgeable. She said herself, her hyper focus is neurodiversity because she was on a mission to understand herself, and she was so good at delivering that course. I would highly recommend that if there's one running near you. The autism discussion page, it's on Facebook, and every now and again they'll post a thread and people can contribute their thoughts. But he also has some books by Bill Nason. He runs the autism discussion page. It's a great resource. There's the Centre for ADHD and Autism support, and there's NHS services and CAMHS, because that is probably, if there is someone going through the process of being diagnosed, that will be through the NHS ORCAMs. And yeah, I think that come to the end of our slideshow.